The fallout between Nigel Farage and the banks is not yet over, with the CEO of NatWest resigning overnight after admitting that it was a serious error in talking to the BBC about Nigel Farage's account. Now, as I said in previous videos, this is a very serious issue, not just that they discussed Nigel Farage's account with the BBC, but the fact that they closed the account in the first place. And this is a fallout that is going to affect lots of people, as I've said previously. Now, Nigel Farage does not accept that this should be the end of it. In fact, he's calling for anyone that supported the CEO in speaking about his account should no longer be on the board. Others must follow, he said. He said that he hopes that this serves as a warning to the banking industry. Now, some people say that Alison Rose's resignation as the CEO of NatWest, which owns Coutts, is a little too far. And others may agree with Nigel Farage that anyone that supported her in speaking out against his account should also resign. It was on Tuesday that Alison Rose acknowledged in a statement that she discussed Nigel Farage's relationship with the bank with the BBC business editor Simon Jack. At the time, the NatWest chairman, Howard Davies, said that Rose retained the full confidence of the bank's board and that there'd be an independent review into this matter. But following an emergency board meeting late on Tuesday, the bank, which is roughly 40% owned by UK taxpayers, said that she would step down. They said that this was a sad moment as she dedicated all her working life to NatWest for over 30 years, but Nigel Farage, as I said, does not agree and said that Rose was unfit to run a bank and further criticised the NatWest chairman and the CEO of Coutts. Thomson Reuters reports that the Treasury has not immediately responded to request for comment following the resignation, and you might remember that on Monday the BBC apologised to Nigel Farage after originally reporting that he'd fallen below the financial threshold to be a customer of Coutts in a story that Jack later described as incomplete and inaccurate. The BBC said that we acknowledge that the information we reported, that Coutts' decision on Nigel Farage's account did not involve considerations about his political views, turned out not to be accurate and have apologised to Mr Farage. The information on which we based our reporting on Nigel Farage and his bank accounts came from a trusted and senior source. However, the information turned out to be incomplete and inaccurate. So that not only raises the questions about senior bank officials talking to BBC journalists about accounts, which should obviously remain absolutely confidential. I don't think you need a lawyer to tell you that the relationship that somebody holds with the bank should be kept confidential by the bank, even if some of that information might be already guessed or in the public domain, but the relationship nonetheless should be kept confidential. It was only after that it was reported by the BBC that Nigel Farage felt the need to come out and discuss and say that it was in fact Coutts that had closed his account, and then to provide more information on it. And as I've said in previous videos, whether you like him or dislike him, Nigel Farage has raised a very important issue for us all to talk about, because many people are talking about a digital currency and whether or not having your money held digitally is going to end up with some sort of authoritarian system whereby you no longer have control over your own assets and your own money. But I would argue that we are already some way along that process, because as I've said in many videos before now about this very issue, I take this issue very seriously because it's been one of those very few cases where I've not been able to assist a client. And by that, I don't mean going to court and losing the case. What I mean is I couldn't get anywhere because the bank's terms and conditions and the way that the banks operate allowed them to close my client's account because of the information that was discovered, which was that the bank could not prove that my client was not involved in some kind of fraudulent activity. So in other words, it was very much a guilty until proven innocent scenario for my client, and the bank just ignored my letters. But even if my client wanted to go to court over it, there must have been some cause of action. But because it's within the bank's terms and conditions and money laundering requirements and so on, which obviously they do need to comply with money laundering requirements to prevent fraud and fraudulent activity and anything to do with money laundering, that still left my client in the position that they could not do anything about it. And so, as I say, it's a very serious issue because that was one of the few cases where there there was simply nothing or next to nothing that I could do. I could write to the banks, I could plead with them and explain the situation, but ultimately they just ignored me. They didn't even reply to my letters. Get that, letters from a law firm they just ignored because the terms and conditions, the laws and the rules allowed them to do so. Now, I'm not for one moment suggesting that the laws on fraud and money laundering need to disappear, but the banks do need to have accountability for what they do when they close an account or even freeze an account because of suspicions of fraud. So as it is, this is the first major step with the CEO of NatWest resigning over this whole story. So as I called it, and as I said in previous videos, this is a very serious issue and this is not going away overnight. So that's the brief update with the CEO of NatWest resigning over this story, and I suspect there'll be more to come in the next hours and days and possibly weeks and months, and I'll come back and tell you about those as well. In the meantime, please do hit that like button and subscribe, hit the notification bell because I do like to keep you up to date on these things. Think of me as your barrister, giving you guidance, not legal advice, you understand, on this channel, as I've been doing so now for some 2,000 odd videos for several years. And I'm very pleased to say that this channel has now gone over 325,000 subscribers. I'm very grateful to you all for that. And my other channel, where I give you my personal views on black belt secrets, has now jumped over 90,000 subscribers. I'm so grateful for you all subscribing there. I'll link that down below as well. And in the meantime, have a great day. I'll see you next time.